Hi and welcome back to a new video. Today I'm going to show you how you can build my 0.9 5x5 that I made together with Frozen, and then G6W9 helped me a bit with making the bottom smaller. So yeah, that's the animation. So there have been a couple changes since the version I posted as a showcase. The first one being that the piston on the top left doesn't spaz anymore, unlike on the old one where it went like up and down and back up. And yeah, so now it's kinda fully in sync-ish, which is pretty cool. And also I've made this door a bit cheaper. Yeah, size is still 1014 blocks, still opens in 0.9 seconds, and yeah, so I guess now I'm gonna show you how to build it. First to the materials. You will need 2 stacks and 8 hallway blocks, and in this count the door blocks are actually included. Then you will need 22 blocks for the input line, 20 blocks for the side circuitry, 18 solid blocks for the top circuits, and 11 solid blocks for the bottom. Additionally, you will need 30 transparent blocks. I'm just gonna use smooth stone slabs, but you could also use like glowstone or glass or whatever. Then 12 blocks that are in sliders. I kinda like, I don't know, have them as extra blocks. They could be solid, they could be transparent, doesn't really matter, but I just have them as 12 glass. And then you need 2 immovable blocks. These can be obsidian, furnaces, whatever. Now for the redstone components. For layout stuff and toggles you will need a stack and 18 sticky pistons, 37 normal pistons. Then you will of course need 1 toggled input, such as a lever or a button, or well, a button connected to the flip-flop, not just a button. Just a button won't work. Then you will need a stack and 33 observers, a stack and 19 redstone dust, 22 repeaters, 12 targets, 5 comparators, 16 redstone blocks, and 13 node blocks. And for the a bit more obscure redstone components, I guess redstone torches aren't really obscure, but whatever. You will need 16 leaves of any kind, 6 logs, 5 rails. These need to be either powered rails or activator rails. You will need 3 redstone torches, 3 hoppers, 2 composters, and you will need like 2 bread or whatever. Both composters need a signal strength of 1, so you need to tap it like once with an item. Then you will also need 2 furnaces, 2 scaffoldings, a dispenser and a water bucket for the dispenser, a detector rail, a trapdoor. I will use iron trapdoors. Wooden trapdoors work as well, but they are just a little bit more dangerous because you could just accidentally flick it. And then 1 trap chest. Those are your redstone components. And now for the stuff in the containers, you will need 2 just non-stackables. No, sorry, 2 stackables up to 64. And I guess 10 non-stackables. But they can also be like stacks of stackables. Doesn't matter, as long as like the container is full. So yeah, whatever. Now for the dimensions, you will need to dig down 3 blocks, 3 blocks to each side, and you will need to dig up 3 blocks. And for the width, the door frame is like weirdly centered, so you'll have 2 blocks to the back and 3 blocks to the front. Let's break all of this. Yeah, so I guess let's start with the layout, and I will start with the bottom. So in the center you have your double piston extender. On the left you have a storage and your piston, and then the block swapper. And also one thing I almost forgot. You will need your one immovable right here. Then for the sides, you have 4 doubles stacked on each other. Then, yeah, in the front, you will have a 2-block gap, and then a piston facing in that direction. And just put 3 extra pistons on top, and fill this in with blocks. On the other side, you will just have a 1-block gap, and yeah, just continue the piston column. That should be about it for the side layout. Now just copy it to the other side. So your 4 doubles, 2-block gap, and 4 pistons stacked. Fill it in with blocks, and your fold with a 1-block gap. That is the side. Now for top. Top is divided in 2 sections. One is the side triple, which will be on the right side. It's a folded triple. And then you have your 2 singles, which are also needed for that. And then you have your main extender with 2 singles next to it. That is your top layout, and also the second immovable goes to here. So that is that. I guess let's destroy this for a second. I mean, you don't need to destroy it if you place it, but I'll just destroy it to show how the layout works, I guess. So sides, we just push this in, and we short pulse this out, extend this in, and extend this. That's the closing. And for opening, we retract this, short pulse this. We also retract this at the start, I just forgot, I guess. Yeah, then we 0-tick this in, 0-tick this out. 1 game tick these blocks back. And then we just, I think this is actually 1 game ticking as well. And then just 0-tick. That's how sides work. Make sure to put the immovable back if you broke it like me. And now for top and bottom, we push these down. And I guess on bottom we push this up. Then sides push that in. Then we push this out. Yeah, like that. And then we just push top down. And for bottom, we just push this up. Block swapper, storage, and up it goes. And I guess we push these down as well at some point. Those don't really matter, so yeah. And then for opening, I guess we retract like these. Oh, I forgot that we need to push this piston down in closing. So yeah, do that. Then for opening, we retract these. 0-tick the back piston and not this block. Then 0-tick the front piston, which actually gets updated by this piston. Yeah, I forgot something, so if you haven't placed it, which you probably don't, then just place it. Yeah, then this gets 0-ticked, and then this gets 3 game tick pulsed. I mean, top after that just like retracts like normal. This, and then the fold. And the triple also retracts like normal. It's just fully maxed, but yeah. And then for the bottom, you just retract this block in your storage, retract this down, then retract this down, this back into the storage, it can go away, and then you just have your double. So that should be the bottom. And with that out of the way, let's actually get to the wiring. So I guess we can start off by placing the input, which is in the dead center on the front of the door, right here. Dust on top, and then just 2 0-tick repeaters, 2 instant repeaters going into each direction. And yeah, I would probably first start with the left side because that's easier. So place a block here, then get your first non-solid block and place like a C shape like this, whoops, with blocks going down and then back up. place dust on all of them. And then another block up here with dust, and cut that off so it points into the piston. Then just continue the slab tower and run it into another solid block. Dust on all of them. And that should be your left input line, so that just pushes these blocks in. Now let's actually continue with the side setup. So the first thing we have is, let me get the blocks. Yeah, we have two inputs like that, and they are connected using a slider, which is right here. Yeah, just place a piston on top of that, and at the bottom place it with a 1 block gap. Then under this, you want to place a piston facing down. And also very important, you want to place a node block here. That's not necessarily important for the slider, but for other stuff. I'll probably say it when I get there. So that's your first slider. Let's actually keep it in that state yet for now. So now for the second slider, you want to have an observer just facing to the back, I guess. 3 glass and an observer facing to the side with normal piston up here and 1 block gap before this normal piston. And then this piston, to update it, you want to place it facing into this direction. And place a block here. So that is a 0-tick slider. And that's actually the reason for the node block, because this slider needs to power all 4 pistons. Right now it only directly powers these 3, and it QC powers this piston. And since we could only really fit in 1 return bed, or 1 return piston, we actually need a node block or an instant updater to update the bottom piston. So that's why that is there. Let's return it, I guess. I think that's fine now. And place our last slider, because why not? So piston facing up here, piston facing into the door, block on top. Now place an observer facing to the side with a target. Now, real quick, place a slab and a redstone block here with dust. And then just observers and targets in an alternating pattern like this. And lastly, place a return piston. So that should be the entire side setup done. And now let's actually get to the wiring. So how this works is the first thing that happens is these pistons extend. And then this block here arrives under the obsidian at 3 game ticks. And this is when it updates the back pistons. And we want the back pistons to 1 game tick, so we power this slider at 4 game ticks, which unpowers the back pistons at 4. So they just 1 game tick the blocks out. How we do that is just observer, node block, into observer. And the way the slider works is if you 2 game tick it, the blocks actually go down and back up, because nothing is blocking it really. And it has a 0-tick return after 3 game ticks. So you want to have a toggle that keeps the top piston powered. So this powers it from 4 to 6. And then this observer, since it gets powered by this node block, that gets powered at 2 game ticks. The observer arrives here at 4 and powers from 6 to 8. So yeah, that's why this long pulses and it stays down. Like this. You see, they just spat out the blocks and this stays at the bottom. And the only thing left in the closing is we just need to move the slider here up. And that would just finish closing. So let's do that, I guess. I am a very smart person, so if you just followed along and reset this as well, then just 0-tick it again or something. You can also like zero tick this with a lever if you're in survival. Yeah, so you want the pistons to be in that state right now. Long post this top piston, and then zero tick this again. So it's reset. Alright, now for powering this piston, you wanna just have your input line extended. Then place like a little V shape here with dust on top of this block. And then a repeater in the gap. So it powers this at 2 game ticks. And the observers power these pistons at 6 game ticks. Because that's how sliders work. Just has like 4 game ticks input delay after it's powered. Anyways. Yeah, so that should finish closing. And how opening works is, I guess I can just close it. So these pistons are gonna instantly retract the blocks. I mean, the slider also gets instantly updated, so it doesn't really matter, but yeah, they retract them. And then these pistons need to retract the pistons there at 3 game ticks, which is actually the reason why we don't need like any extra bed for the slider. And yeah, that powering at 3 game ticks, or that retracting, is pretty easy. We just place a piston here with our log of choice, which goes into leaves and into an observer. So this just retracts instantly, leaves updated 1 game tick, and the observer powers the piston at 3. So yeah, targets move down, reds and dust stops powering them, and the pistons retract at 3. And actually, I'll just show you, but that slider also does another pulse. So they retract, and then it zero ticks them in. Which is actually because we powered that at 3, and like I told you, with these sliders, they have 4 game ticks input delay after being moved, so this would power 4 game ticks later, which is at 7. The back pistons, like, this piston gets powered at 4 game ticks again by this, which makes the back pistons just start retracting at 4, and they finish retracting at 7, which is when these can push, which is when they get powered by the slider, so that's pretty nice, I guess. To reset, just power this. Bruh. Oh, yeah, and these blocks need to be directly in front of the pistons. Whoops. And yeah. So, now that we fired the pistons into that state, I mean, now I can just power the slider again, I guess. We actually need to zero tick the back pistons at 8 game ticks, because like the extension, the constant power extension, whatever you want to call it, that just isn't fast enough for the door to be 0.9. So that's why we actually even have the slider in the first place. And we just need to power it at 4 game ticks, so the observer can power at 8. Yeah, I guess let's reset this first. Yeah. And now just place an observer looking down at the log, and one looking at that observer, which goes into a dust, and then into, or it gets redirected using this repeater on 4 game ticks, which just makes it power this piston basically. Yeah. And that should zero tick the pistons out at 8. So that works. And now we need to power the front pistons, or I guess they need to start retracting at 9. So we need to power them from 8 to 9. And for that, we actually have another slider, because what else? So yeah, to place the slider, just go to here, place a piston like that, with an observer, not an observer, but first just a placeholder block. This will be replaced, so this glass is not in the volume, or in the material list, but yeah, just place something random there. And then observer facing down. And on the top, place an observer facing up. Then one block gap and a piston facing down. And lastly, place a redstone dust right here. And also, I'm really good at resetting. So yeah. This and this. Yeah, now to actually power the slider. So, like I said, like 10 times probably, if you power the slider with an observer, the observer starts powering 4 game ticks later. Which basically means that we need to power the slider at 4 game ticks, so it starts powering at 8. And yeah, that's pretty easy actually. Just have a node block here with dust, which powers another node block. And then we just have an observer into a block, which powers the slider at 4 game ticks, because we have the repeater right here. Now we need to unpower the front pistons at 9 game ticks. That's very important, otherwise it's too slow. And to do that, we have a repeater here and an observer here running into a block. But now this would actually, so the repeater would power at 8, which it would turn on at 10. And this observer would power this block at 12. So this piston powers at 12, which is like way too slow because we need to power at 9. So, but there can't be like a hopper, because first of all it would just power at 10, and also I'm pretty sure that would do like weird stuff with the pistons here. But yeah, we made this door like a bit ago, so I don't really remember. But you need a repeater there. And then place a leaf here with an observer into a repeater. How that works is this piston starts instantly retracting. The log gets here at 2 game ticks from the leaf's point of view. So the leaf starts updating at 3. The observer adds 2 game ticks, so we're at 5 now. Then this repeater another 2, so we're at 7. And then this observer makes it 9. So that should work. Yeah. As you can see, that worked nicely. And there's just 2 things we need to do now. One is, these pistons are annoying because they need to be retracted, but like how the zero tick gen works is they end up at the top state, so we need to 6 game tick this piston. 4 game tick would not be enough. And after that, we need to power this slider at 12 game ticks. So it just does the retraction. Let's work on this piston first. So for that, we need to 6 game tick it at 10 game ticks. And for that, we just take output from this observer here into a block, into a piston, with another observer. That goes into a 6 game tick repeater, which, yeah, basically just concludes it to powering at 10, because 1, 2, 3, 4, and then plus 6, so that's 10. That just goes into a block, and this just goes down into redstone dust, which powers a block here and QCs only that piston, except it doesn't, because there is a block here, so that block actually needs to be transparent. And we actually use that transparent block because we have an observer there. So just replace the 6 game tick repeater. Yes, this 6 game ticks at 10, which should mean these observers power from 14 to 16, which is perfect, because the second zero tick here happens at 15, so the pistons are just retracting. Yeah, and to power that at 12, we just use this observer here, like that. So we have 2 observers here, which are 4 game ticks, this repeater, which is another 4, and then these two, which are another 4, and 3 times 4 is 12. So that works, but the problem is that this piston doesn't get directly powered, it gets QC'd, so we need to update it at 12. And how we do that is we just place a 6 game tick repeater here with just 3 observers. And yeah, that updates this piston at 12 and at 14 by this observer turning on and off, which is exactly the same timings as this observer, so it just works. And that is the roll done. Or the side, I guess. This needs to be... I guess it doesn't need to be across. So yeah. Now I will actually continue with this triple, because that just makes more sense right now. Because the way we made it is actually we made the triple and the side at the same time, because there wasn't really a lot of space, so we needed to connect a lot of stuff. So I'll just show a bit of the triple first, then I'll finish the side probably, and then the triple. So yeah. Let's start with extending the input line. So place 2 blocks like that, 1 raised, into a slab tower. And yeah, so this goes up to here, and actually I don't know why this is a node block here. I'm pretty sure it should work with a block, because this piston just gets updated by this, which just would get updated by this. So I'm pretty sure this should be fine. Yeah, there is no issue, so I guess there's like 1 less node block and 1 more yellow block, so yeah, the more you know. Place dust on all of these blocks, and then actually go into a yellow block, into a block, go up, like that. Now go up into a red block actually, and then into a slab, and lastly finish this up with a hopper, which actually ends up at signal strength 15, so that's pretty cool. And because this is signal strength 15 and we still need to power this piston, just place a target and a node block down here. This needs to be a node block because we really don't want these pistons to retract with a lot of bed to make life easy. So yeah, that should... Actually, I don't know why this block is yellow. It's the input line, so it should be red. What am I doing? Well, add a red block and remove a yellow block, I guess. It doesn't really matter, it's just my color coding skills, which suck. Yeah, so this should just power the singles instantly and depower them instantly. So that's pretty cool. What we need to do now is we need to short pulse this this back piston. And how we do that is by placing a target here, going into a node block, and then into an observer. This powers the back piston from 2 to 4, but these top pistons extend from 0 to 3, so this can only power at 3 realistically, but nothing updates at 3 right now. And so yeah, we need to do that update right now. So yeah, the update actually happens through these back pistons that just get updated by the blocks moving basically. Place 2 slabs right here with dust on top, and 2 lime blocks right here with dust on top. I mean, they don't have to be lime, but just 2 blocks. Then redstone block here and redstone block there. 2 glass here. piston like that, and one with a gap. This time you need a piston facing the back, because there's gonna be dust down here, so you can't really have it like that. Just place it like this. And don't forget the note block, because I always do. And apparently I'm very good at stuff or something. So just reset the door like that. Should be fine. Right. So yeah, this should be fine actually, because the blocks just move and then the back pistons just power at 3 when they arrive, which should update the top piston. Yeah, so let's see that in action. Yeah, that's exactly what we want. And now we just need to move this piston down at some random timing that isn't too late because of other stuff. So yeah, we set this again. And yeah, now let's power this. So first you want to have like your door block here with 2 repeaters, and then, oh, I have an observer here, into an observer. So that just powers it from 6 to 8, which is fine, because the back piston unpowers at 4. So yeah. Also, before I forget, place 2 obsidian blocks right here, because that just makes testing this side triple way less of a pain. I guess I can show the closing, but it should just work. Yeah, so that's what you want to see. Anyways, so yeah, just reset it like that again. And now for the first pulse of the opening. So we have it in that state, and then these blocks retract. And now the piston right here needs to 0 tick, which is what we're gonna do now. So first, let's go up to here, place like a slab into a red block, into a sticky piston with a redstone block. This adds 1 bed, goes into this yellow block, into dust, and that goes into a piston facing up and a sticky piston facing here with a target, which that adds another 2 bed, and then just place a slab here and a comparator right here with a hopper here. Technically this hopper can also be a furnace if you want, but I'm not gonna wait ages for the items to melt, because we actually need this hopper to be full. And these blocks can also be shovels or whatever. So let me actually make them shovels, because that's more survival friendly. I just didn't have them in my inv. Like that. Yeah, so this just unpowers at 3 bed, but the problem is that this back piston never gets updated right now, so it would just never 0 tick or do anything. And for that, that's a really easy fix. Just place a normal piston right here, which should just update it after these top pistons retract. So yeah, I guess let's test it. That should just 0 tick it out. Nice. So that works. Let's reset it again. And what needs to happen now is we need to 0 tick the front piston. And the 0 ticker has 2 parts, which is 1, the powering, and then we need to update it somehow to unpower after 0 gain ticks. So yeah. But let's work on the powering first. So put a block here into a slab, just go up. Then we have a piston, sticky piston with a redstone block in this direction. Then a normal piston right here. One right here facing down. One here facing this way. And one up here facing in that direction. With a log. Like that. This log is needed for later, but just place it now. And yeah, this is actually gonna power this redstone dust input. If this input faces into this piston, nothing would work because the block would just stay here for way too long. Just redirect it. We actually need an observer because we need to place something on that, and it needs to not power anything. And also place a block here for now, because that's easier to place right now. Or I guess less annoying. Yeah, so now you can just place another block here. Then comparator here. And repeater here. With redstone block. And yeah, just lock this repeater for an infinite power source. So that should power this dust. Yeah. So what we want to see now is actually this piston just long pulsing. So if you see that, then that's just nice. And if not, then I fucked up. But yeah. As you can see, that just powers. And the only thing missing for it to zero tick is the update now. And let's reset the side first. So the update is actually what this piston up here is gonna do. And the way we power it is we have a piston here with a yellow block. And when it's in this state here, the comparator here will power it. But for the comparator to be able to power, we need a furnace here. And just place one item in it, and it's important that it's just one stackable item to 64. So yeah, that will just butt power this piston. And how that works now, like how we make it work at all, is in the closing, this just gets powered at 3 game ticks when this already extended, and nothing else can really update that piston. And in the opening, the update for this piston to extend comes from, well, the piston next to that, retracting, which, yeah, just sends an update for this to extend. Then after, like a bit of bad, also, I forgot something. You need a target here. And I believe it was a piston. No, never mind. Yeah, it was a node block. My brain. So, yeah. And yeah, this is enough bed for this piston to just power from the update, but then nothing updates it for a long time until this redstone dust here unpowers, which, if you're not aware, redstone dust actually sends out updates in like in this region. That's the update hitbox of dust. And then same thing on the bottom. So that's how far dust updates. So it actually updates 2 blocks next to it. Which means that this dust here can update like through the piston and update this piston to 0 tick, which is pretty nice and pretty useful. Yeah, and what you should see now is that this piston just 0 ticks the block in, and this just 0 ticks the block back. And of course I forgot something, but like that's not a big deal because it's still gonna 0 tick. It's still gonna update. Yeah, as you can see right here. still updated. So all good. And I'll move the slider down, reset everything. So what I forgot is that actually, when like all of these pistons here power, that's a lot of delay. And then this dust gets powered on closing, it actually updates this piston. So what we need is this block to just be in the extended state. And how that works is we just place 2 observers right here, running into a block with dust on top, into a, or I guess it gets redirected by a detector rail, like that. And that will actually power this piston on the opening. On the closing, this piston is just extended. And yeah, that's about it for that. So let's see if this works now. Yeah. So that's more like we want to see. So, or like what we want to see. So yeah, send the slider down, reset everything. The default stuff. Now let's get to the side. So let's actually finish the setup. It's really similar like on the other side. So place an observer here, 3 glass, 1 observer here, running into a block, and then just 2 pistons to update that, and 1 up here. That's your first slider. Then the second slider, we have a piston here, block, piston inwards, and observer looking out. Then place your target. Now first place your slab and redstone block, dust on all of them. Now the observer, target, observer pattern with a normal piston up here. That should be the entire side setup. Let's reset that slider. And what is happening right now is these blocks move in and then just nothing happens. So what we need to do now is move this slider down at 4 game ticks, like on the other side. Except here we do it like that. Powering this block. And to long pulse it only on the closing. Whoops. We have a log down here with 2 leaves going up. So that adds 2 game ticks. Then 3, 4. That goes into a hopper, and actually a rail should also work. So whatever. And then into another observer, and then into 2 redstone dusts. So yeah, that should just keep this piston powered from 6 to 8. So this powers it from 4 to 6, and then this keeps it on until 8. And on opening, the log is on like this position. So it actually takes 2 game ticks to retract. So this observer powers 2 game ticks later, which is completely fine because that's just blocked by the bottom piston pushing up. So yeah, all of that works. So that's actually a toggle, even if you don't see it. And now let's do the constant powering of this dust. For that, go down like that, and then in this gap place a repeater. That should just move the slider up, and that should be the entire closing. Now here, place a log here actually, which will just do the 3 game tick thing to like send the slider down at 3, so these unpower at 3. Then we have the 1 game tick at 4 already with these. And this slider goes down, powers at 7, 0 ticks at 7, so we have that. And this slider actually already by these 2 observers gets sent down at 8. So we have that back 0 tick as well. And what we would need now is powering the front piston. So let's see how that looks. Yeah, So that's actually already quite a bit of the sides done without even like actively wiring them, which is pretty cool. So now for these sliders, which I should have probably placed at the beginning actually, but it's fine. Place a normal piston up here. 5 blocks. Observer facing down. Then 2 glass blocks and 1 normal piston at the bottom. On the other side, place a normal piston, 1 under the obsidian. 4, actually 3 door blocks. And now place a piston up here with an observer here, which would retract the block fired out by this piston, and an observer here, which would just like power the side. And then this observer right here, which we used for the closing, can actually also be used to retract the block from here to here by the triple. So that's like really cool, this slider. I kind of like it. And yeah, now let's power them both. So first, let's do the slider that pushes down. To power it with 4 game ticks, just do this. And actually, one more thing about the slider is you need to toggle it on the closing. So just power it like that. This needs to be a slide for bottom. Because now this just can't push down. Otherwise it would update this very fun, totally not annoying piston. Yeah. And on opening it just pushes down, which is fine. Then it powers at 8. And now it has to unpower at 9. So we place 1, 2, 3 observers here into a block and then just into a piston like that. So that should work. Doesn't really matter that it gets powered by this redstone block because it just unpowers at 0 anyways. So that should be the right slider. Now for the back slider. To power it, place a node block down here with a sticky piston here and an observer here so that it can power this block. And this actually acts as a toggle, which we don't really need, but I guess it's a nice to have. But it's more so for bottom. But yeah, the piston retracting gets the observer here at 2 and it powers at 4. So that works. Now to send the slider back down, I believe it was something like this. So the log retracts, gets here 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we just have 2 observers, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it gets sent down at 9. I guess we can just test that. Yeah, so that all works and actually looks pretty nice. Now there's just 2 things left for the sides. One is resetting this. So 6 game tick pulls at 10. And then the last thing is just powering this at 12. And obviously we need to retract the triple. So let's start with the 6 game tick at 10. For that, you want to go into here and place a block here with a 6 game tick repeater on top. Then an observer looking at the target and an observer looking at the observer, firing or powering the 6 game tick. So that should be that. Now for the pulse at 12, that's actually really easy. We just have an 8 game tick repeater underneath the redstone block into a sticky piston facing down with an observer looking like that. And so on the closing it won't power it, which doesn't matter, but I guess that's a nice extra. And on the opening this piston will retract at 8 game ticks. And the observer gets here at 10 and powers at 12. So that should be the sides done. Yeah. And what we need to do now is retract this piston up at 12 game ticks. So if one game ticks at 8, so it retracts the block at 9, and it finished at 12, which is when we need to retract it. So let's do that. That's actually like a pretty nice thing. We fit it just nicely right here. So place an observer up right here next to the node block into a slab with rails on top, and then just have an observer here into a 6 game tick repeater. Oh yeah, that powered that block, but it doesn't matter. So just do this. That piston retracts instantly. This takes 2 game ticks to power. This takes 6 game ticks. And then this takes another 2. Add all that up, and it adds to 10. But this observer powers for 2 game ticks, so the piston retracts at 12. And now for the last pulse. Now we need to retract this block into here. And it needs to be a pulse from 13 to 15, because the piston won't be there at 12, but 12 would be annoying bad and it would be not sync. So yeah. And the way we do that is actually really simple. Took us way longer to figure out though, because of stuff. So just place an observer here. That should do it. And how that works is we actually time this piston to extend the redstone block at the right time. So if we just count it real quick, it's 1, 2, then the observer under the detector rail, so 3, 4, then the piston extending it, 5, 6, then this piston extending the log, 7, 8, then the sleeve updating 9, this observer 10, 11, and 12, 13, and then it unpowers at 15. So that's how it looks. Yeah, so that's what we want to see. And now with that out of the way, let's actually continue with top. So right now we're just gonna simulate the top closing, because we didn't actually wire the top closing, we just leached it from opening. But yeah, anyways. So the first thing right now is we need to zero tick this after all the bed that this triple has. And what better way than just connecting it to the triple? So yeah, place a piston here with a redstone block, then just place a piston here and here. And also right now is probably a good time to place this input right here, so place 2 slabs with dust. That will just power this piston. And also place a dust on a hallway block right here. Now these both need solid blocks on the face. This is actually blocking this dust from powering up too early. And this just acts as a discount redstone block or something. So place a comparator with a furnace. Very important. 1 stackable item to 64. Because we don't want it to power too much. Yeah. Now we actually need like to get all the bed. So the zero tick is reliable. Let's place a piston here with a target. Powered by a torch. Into a redstone block piston. Powered by a redstone block. And then into solid block. I mean, to be honest, it doesn't matter if this is solid. Into a piston facing down, like this, with a torch down here. And now you probably see why we need the blocker piston, because otherwise this would just always be powered, and we don't want that. We just want it to power for the zero tick. And so now the zero tick should actually work. So let's see. Now simulate the closing if you go along with me. And should look like that. And this does like its little pusher thing, whatever. That's why we have this obsidian here, but it's not needed at the end because it's blocked by the triple. So yeah. We push the piston down here, and now we need this 2 long posts, 3 game tick. How that works is actually, if we just push this or zero tick this piston down here and then power dust here, actually place that dust, this dust is needed. But yeah, if we just power dust here, it doesn't update. So how that works is the bottom piston here needs like a longer zero tick where it powers, then this dust powers, then the piston unpowers, and then the dust just unpowers at like after 2 game ticks. So it actually does a long pause. To be fair, it doesn't need to be 2 game ticks, it could also be a zero tick, but that would just be overcomplicating things, so whatever. Just connect dust to the target here, which is powered by the torch, into a trapped chest, into a piston with a target. This needs to be a target, and that target is just blocking this dust from powering anything, and that dust is powered by a 2 game tick repeater, so that just unpowers at 2 game ticks, but nothing updates this piston at 2 game ticks, so it just self-updates at 3 game ticks. And before we test it now is actually a good time to remove this obsidian, place a block back, and so how this single is done is just by placing a rail here. This rail updates the piston that gets powered by this dust at 2 game ticks, and on the opening this piston just retracts instantly, so that piston also retracts instantly. And for the left piston, that is actually the sync fix, so what we have is a repeater on 6 game ticks, and previously we had this repeater on 4 game ticks, which made the door spaz, and I just changed it to 6 and it worked, and it's pretty cool. So that should be the first move working, and also like all of that immovable stuff. So let's see. Yeah. That's what we want to see. And now we need to retract this piston at the bottom at 6 game ticks. So the easiest way to do it is just to power the middle piston from 4 to 6 with an observer. And that's actually really easy in our case. We can just place 2 observers right here. This is toggled in the closing because of this. And in the opening it only powers the first time, because the second time the block is here. So whatever. Or actually, yeah, whatever. All it works. But yeah, that's how it looks right now. Yeah. Apparently there is still an extra pulse. So maybe I am just unable to count right now. But yeah. Anyways. Maybe there's something else that I didn't see that powers it, but I immediately knew that it isn't a problem because we need to do this zero tick right now at 9, and that actually blocks that pulse. So let's do that right now. For that, place a piston here with a redstone block right here, and then we have an observer looking down at the sleeve with redstone dust on this observer and one on the downwards facing one, and block this off with a block. So that should power this piston from 5 to 7, but we need to keep it on till 9. And for that, we have these 3 dusts. So this log retracts for 2 game ticks, updates this dust, so that's 3, 4, 5. and then observer 6, 7, so it powers from 7 to 9. And here you can already place your one and only dispenser. Don't place anything in it yet, because that would just mess up the door. But yeah, how this works is this observer keeps the piston on, and actually we don't need an update, because when this observer turns off, it just updates this piston head, so the piston can retract again. So that's pretty cool. And I guess I can show you that now. And it's also toggled automatically because of this, which is just toggled by default. So yeah, this just goes down, and then 0 ticks, which blocks that unwanted pulse. And what we need to do now is retract that at 9, and then 0 tick that at 12. And the way we did that is actually using a pseudo. So a double pulse where the first pulse is timed and the second pulse actually goes into a pseudo. I guess it's gonna make more sense when I build it, but basically to generate the double pulse we just have a piston here with an observer looking at it, and then to get the right timing, because this piston actually needs to power at 5, so that this observer powers this piston from 7 to 9 on the first pulse. So yeah, we just have this scaffolding thing with 2 observers like this. That was the easiest way. And now to actually create the pseudo, we need to remove this observer at 12 game ticks, because the second pulse here is happening from 11 to 13. And if we cut this with a piston at 12, then that's just gonna create a pseudo 0 tick. So let's do that. For that, place a block here, 6 game tick, into 2 observers, which add 4. So this powers at 10, and then run it into a target. So this gets powered from 10 to 12, which means this observer just gets retracted at 12. And actually place this observer in this position. Yeah. So this should actually complete top closing. So that's pretty nice. And then the opening is just, yeah. As you can see, the piston got retracted. And now we just need to retract this block with a 0 tick at 15. And guess what? We obviously used a pseudo again, because what else are you gonna fit here? So for the pseudo, place a piston facing, or a sticky piston facing that way, with an observer, which would just power the piston like that. And this needs to power from 10 to 15. So the observer powers from 14 to 15. And yeah, let's first power it from 10 to 14 by placing an observer here with a rail into observer, block, for a game tick repeater into target. Now place a leaf here and an observer here, because it's going to be annoying to place. And that goes into a dust, which gets cut off right here. So this node block powers at 2, then 4, 6, plus 4 is 10. So this dust starts powering this piston at 10. And since this is a 4 game tick pulse, it stops powering at 14. But 14 is 1 game tick short, so we need to repower it from 13 to 15, so it actually stays extended until 15. And how we do that is actually, we don't have any space, so we use this dispenser. Get your one and only water bucket and put it in the dispenser. How that works is this gets powered at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6, 7. So at 7, and then dispensers always output their stuff with 4 game ticks of delay. So the water gets deposited here at 11. Then this observer takes 2 game ticks to power, so it starts powering at 13 and stops at 15. Yeah, that should be top done. So let's see. And that is looking nice. So yeah, you can fill in your top blocks and side blocks now, I guess. Yeah. Nice. And actually this dispenser thing was found by G6W9. Like, not the fact that dispensers can deposit water in leaves, that was known for a bit longer, but just that this dispenser fits in here nicely was just found by him. So I want to credit him for that. Pretty nice thing. Yeah. And now, with that out of the way, let's actually get to the bottom. So the first thing that we want to do during closing is we want to constant power this, and it needs to happen pretty early because it needs to be before the sides push. So we have a piston here with glass, redstone block, glass, and then just for now place your return piston right here. So that's your little slider, which would just move up this block. And then top pushes down. And we just retract that at the right time. Like this. So now it's actually easier to wire the opening before the closing, because a lot of the opening poses can actually be used for closing, which I'll probably mention when we get to those poses. But yeah, I'll just show you where we are at right now. So right now, I guess we first need to do the block swapper. That would be a smart thing to do. But after that, we need to 1 game tick this piston at 2 game ticks. So it retracts this block once it gets here at 3 game ticks. So that already sounds like a fun timing, but luckily we found a pretty nice setup for that, which I'll show you after we build the block swapper. So for that, you want to place your first bottom circuitry block with a torch, then a sticky piston with a redstone block. And this bullshit gets powered by a 2-tick repeater here, or 4 game tick I guess, and a 6 game tick repeater here. And also, actually what I noticed, that's another thing that I forgot to mention at the start, is we used to have this repeater on 8 game ticks, in the showcase I believe as well. And as you can see, that makes the seamless part slow. But luckily there was an easy fix, which is just putting it to 6 game ticks of delay, which just works nicely. So yeah, that's the block swapper done. And now for the very funny 1 game tick pulse, which is done right here. So we have an observer piston here, which powers dust on the slab. The slab will be replaced, but just it needs to be non-solid. And we have a piston right here, which on the opening retracts the observer piston at 3 game ticks. So that just cuts the pulse basically. And the way the observer gets updated, it's very easy. You just have a hopper up here, which that just updates the observer at 2 game ticks. Yeah, so that looks like this. Yep. What needs to happen now is the bottom piston needs to power from 2 to 4. And it actually gets blocked at 2 game ticks by the top. And the way it gets updated, is by this piston. I am unable to talk. This piston right here retracting the block, which updates it at 3, and it just does a 1 game tick pulse from 3 to 4. And how we do that is by placing a piston here with an observer here, and yeah, that's about it, except we also have a piston here to toggle it, because if this powers during closing, then door does the break. So yeah. But actually, this is one of the pulses mentioned, because this actually gets used in the closing. So the way the closing works is this goes up like that, then we push in the storage, and then this. So that's how it gets used. And then in the opening, it's just what I talked about. Like this. So now the next thing, we can finally retract this, or I guess push the slider back at 6 game ticks. And how that works is super easy. We just have a node block here and 2 observers here. And since that node block gets unpowered at 2 game ticks by this repeater, then we have 2 more observers, so they just power it at 6. And that just looks like that. And now we need to power this piston from 5 to 7, so it does a 1 game tick pulse from 6 to 7, because this retracts at 6. So yeah. And that's also like the reason for this obsidian, by the way, if you're curious or whatever. And for this, we're gonna have a piston here with log on its face, and let's break this. And this piston, I think it was like that. It just updates these leaves, so it retracts instantly because the piston head gets updated by the block above it. And then the leaves create 3 game ticks of delay. And then this observer creates another 2, so it powers from 5 to 7, which is like the timing we need. So yeah, that should be the storage done, actually. And by the way, that happens when you don't remove this observer. Now you need to like break this block and replace it. And also make sure to update this piston before you open it. So now this should look like that. Yeah. And so this lock retracts at 7. So now we can just 0 tick the bottom piston at 8 without any problems. And how that works is we have a little 0 tick gen right here with an observer facing down. And yeah, now we just have a dust here going into a piston. And then we have 1 observer here and 2 observers here like that into a block. It's important that the observers that power it later actually QC this piston, because otherwise this wouldn't be a 0 tick, this would be a nothing, because it doesn't have bed, but it has bed through the QC. Yeah, and it is at 8 because this unpowers at 8. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the observer pulls. The observer sends a 2 game tick pulse, so it unpowers at 8. Yeah, I'm great at breaking my doors. So this should look like this now. I'm really great at breaking my doors. Okay, this time without breaking anything, so remove this toggle, close, and yeah, then put this toggle in, update this leaf, or this log. And this time it should actually work. Yeah, so that's what we wanna see. And now we just need to one game tick this piston from 8 to 9. And that's actually a really cool thing, which is like pretty simple. So how that works is, first just place the observer here because it's annoying to place. We have a piston right here with an observer facing down. This goes into that flow block. And make sure to place the block here. So this observer powers from 4 to 6. And this slider moves up at 4. And actually the blocks move for 2 game ticks, which is also why the observers like power 4 game ticks after it moves. Because they moved, and then the observers take 2 game ticks to realize that. Which means that since this pushes from 4 to 6, this gets both the update at 4 and at 6 to power and unpower from this observer, which powers from 4 to 6, which is like really convenient. And then the second thing, the retraction of that piston happens at 9, because this slider powers from 8 to 9. So that's like really nice. And yeah, we can use that, and that's pretty cool. So that should look like this now. Yeah, I'm still very great at breaking doors, so reset the toggle and update the lock thing. And that should look like this now. So now we need to retract the top piston at 12 and then zero tick it at 15. So the retraction at 12 is like really easy. Place a piston facing down right here. This gets powered from 6 to 8. So we just have an observer here facing up and across, which adds 4 game ticks. So it powers from 10 to 12, which is perfect. I'll just place a block with dust. And that should be that. And now for the retraction at 15. You want to have a sticky piston under the obsidian with a solid block. But yeah, because the reason why it can't be a redstone block is because of that piston with the observer. But now we have a little problem. We aren't powering the block here. So we need like a repeater here. And we need to lock the repeater somehow, so we have a comparator here. And 2 composters here. Fill both of them up with 1 item, should be enough. Like this. Actually remove the comparator for now. And put the repeater on 8 game ticks for good measure. And lock it again with the comparator. And replace the piston. So that should be the setup for this. Now let's actually power it. So place 1 slab here, 1 slab here, with 2 dusts. And now that gets powered by an 4 game tick repeater. And that gets powered because it needs to power from well, the repeater, or the dust before the repeater, needs to get powered at 7, so the repeater can power from 11 to 15. Yeah. So how we do that is we place a piston here, break this I guess, node block here, with dust here, place a log right there, with leaves right here I believe. and then just place 2 observers like this and like this into redstone dust. And cool thing about this is it doesn't even need to be toggled on closing, because it doesn't power anything anyways. So yeah, that should make that should make opening work. So let's see. So here you actually see that dust at 12 does our first pulse up, and we just retract it like this, update the leaf, and extend this, and that is also our closing done. And opening should work as well. Nice. So now let's work on the closing. For that, you wanna have, you wanna actually use this toggle with a repeater on 4 game ticks, I think. And that goes into just 2 observers like this. Yeah. That should actually be this side basically done. And so that should do like, yeah, like this thing. Now we need to update this at late. So we just have an observer here and here, and then just huge observer spam up until here. That should update it at the right time actually. And now lastly we just need to push this observer at the right time, so as early as it gets basically. And for that we have an observer here and here facing up, running into this direction with 3 more observers, then 2 more here, and 1 facing down. And that should just about do it. So let's see. Yeah. And that looks pretty good. So yeah, that is how you can build my 9x9, and I hope you learned a little bit, at least, from today's video about how this works. So yeah, I guess if you've watched until this point, then thanks for watching, and see ya in the next video. Bye!